what we mean when we say someone is in love. What's really happening there? When two people fall in love, they're playing a very ancient and rather elaborate game. It's a game of mutual deception, though we'd never call it that at a wedding. Each person presents to the other a carefully edited version of themselves. Not the whole catastrophe, mind you, but the highlight reel, the charming bits, the mysterious bits. And the other person, equally desperate for connection, agrees to believe in this edited version. They invest in it. They build their dreams around it. This is what we call romance. And it's absolutely necessary for the game to work. But when you awaken, and I mean truly awaken, not just have a pleasant experience in meditation, something rather catastrophic happens. Something happens to your ability to play this game. You see through your own editing process. You watch yourself trying to be charming, and you see it for what it is. A performance, a mask, a clever little dance you've been doing since you were old enough to realize that certain behaviors get approval and others get rejection. And worse still, you see through everyone else's performance too. The awakened person stands before another human being completely naked, psychologically speaking. No pretense, no carefully crafted image, no future promises of becoming someone better, someone more complete. Just this strange, cosmic accident of consciousness that somehow learned to call itself by a name. And that level of transparency is absolutely terrifying to people who are still identified with their personas. You know what happens when you stop pretending? When you stop playing the game of I am this kind of person and I'm looking for that kind of person? People don't know what to do with you. They can't get a grip on you. It's like trying to nail Jell-O to the wall. You become unpin-downable. And our entire romantic structure is based on pinning people down into roles, into promises, into predictable patterns. The unawakened person is looking for someone to complete them. They're looking for their other half, as the saying goes. But the awakened soul isn't a half looking for another half. They're already whole. And two whole people meeting, now that's an entirely different proposition than two halves trying to make a whole. Most people aren't ready for that. They don't want wholeness meeting wholeness. They want need meeting need. That desperate clinging that feels like love but is really just two people afraid of their own emptiness, trying to fill the void with another person's presence. Imagine you meet someone at a party. Charming person, quite attractive. They ask you what you do, where you're going in life, what your dreams are, all the usual questions we use to build the story of who we think we are. Now, if you're awake, you realize you can't answer these questions honestly without sounding like you've lost your mind. Because the honest answer is, I'm nobody going nowhere, and the whole thing is a cosmic joke. I'm the universe pretending to be a person, asking another part of the universe pretending to be a person what they pretend to do. Try that at a cocktail party sometime and watch what happens. The person will smile politely and find someone else to talk to, someone who's still playing the game, someone who has ambitions and plans and a 5-year strategy, someone they can understand, categorize, and potentially fit into their life story. You see, people want to date a character in a novel, not the space between the words. They want someone with a story they can follow, a trajectory they can predict, a future they can imagine. The awakened person has no story. They're just here, now, being whatever is happening. The more you see through the illusion of the separate self, the less you can participate in the usual dance of relationship. Because that dance requires two people who believe they're separate selves. It requires someone who can say, I need you, and mean it in that desperate, hungry way that makes for great poetry and terrible relationships. The kind of need that keeps the whole machinery of romance grinding along. That beautiful, tragic need that spawns 1,000 love songs and 1,000,000 broken hearts. It's the fuel that the entire romantic industrial complex runs on. But when you've awakened, you can't say, I need you in that way anymore. Not because you're cold or detached, but because you've seen that the I who would need and the you who would fulfill that need are both characters in a play. You've walked backstage and seen the ropes and pulleys. You can't unsee that. And you can't pretend you haven't seen it just to make someone feel comfortable. So you stand there, utterly available, completely open, but somehow impossible to possess. And possession, my friends, is what most people mistake for love. Think about the language we use. My girlfriend, my boyfriend, my wife, my husband. We speak of human beings as if they were property. And when someone leaves us, we feel robbed, betrayed, as if something that belonged to us has been stolen. The awakened person cannot be owned because they don't even own themselves. How can you possess someone who has realized they don't exist as a separate, solid entity? It's like trying to capture smoke. You can see it, you can move through it, but the moment you try to grab it, there's nothing there. And this is where it gets truly interesting. The awakened person loves, oh yes, they love more deeply than you can imagine. But it's a love without hooks, a love without agenda, a love that doesn't ask anything in return because there's no separate entity there to receive anything. It's like the sun shining. The sun doesn't decide to shine on you because you've been good or withhold its light because you've been bad. It just shines. That's what it does. And the awakened person loves in this same unconditional, indiscriminate way. But you see, most people don't want that kind of love. They want the other kind, the kind with conditions, the kind that says, I love you because you make me feel complete. I love you because you validate my existence. I love you because when I'm with you, I can forget the gnawing anxiety that I might not really exist at all. That's the love that comes with strings attached, with contracts written in invisible ink, with expectations that neither party can ever quite articulate but both understand perfectly. It's a business arrangement disguised as romance. The awakened soul cannot enter into this arrangement, not because they're superior or enlightened in some holier-than-thou sense, but because they've seen through the very mechanism that makes the arrangement possible. They can't fake the neediness. They can't manufacture the anxiety that makes possession feel like security. They can't pretend that another person has the power to make them whole because they've discovered they were never broken to begin with. And so they wander through this world of lovers like a sober person at a party where everyone else is drunk. Everyone around them is caught up in the drama, the intensity, the passionate highs and crushing lows of romantic love. And they're just watching with a kind of bemused affection, like a parent watching children play a very serious game of make-believe. They can appreciate the beauty of it. They can even participate to some degree, but they can't lose themselves in it. And losing yourself is precisely what falling in love is supposed to be about. We even say it that way, don't we? I lost myself in her eyes. I was beside myself with passion. The language reveals the truth. Romantic love is about losing yourself, about abandoning the burden of being a separate individual, if only for a moment, in the arms of another. It's about merger, fusion, the temporary dissolution of boundaries, and it feels ecstatic precisely because, for a brief moment, you get a taste of what the awakened person knows all the time. That separation is an illusion, that we're all one thing looking at itself through a billion different faces. But then the moment passes and the boundaries snap back into place and you're separate again. And so you chase that feeling. You fall in love again and again, trying to recapture that moment of dissolution. You mistake the person for the experience. You think it's about them, but it's not. It's about the temporary breaking down of the walls you've built around yourself. The awakened person doesn't need another person to experience this, because the walls are already down permanently. They live in that state of unity that everyone else is desperately seeking through relationship. Can you see the problem? They're offering what everyone wants, but in a form that no one recognizes. It's like someone offering free water to people dying of thirst, but the water isn't in a bottle or a glass. It's just water, pure and simple. And people walk right past it because it doesn't look like what they think they're looking for. They want the container. They want the form. They want someone who needs them back, who will play the game with conviction, who will suffer dramatically when they threaten to leave, who will cling and grasp and promise forever. The awakened person can't do any of that. Not convincingly, anyway. And so they become untouchable. Not because they're trying to be, not because they think they're too good for ordinary love, but because they've evolved beyond the very mechanism that makes ordinary love possible. They're like a butterfly trying to explain flight to caterpillars. The caterpillars aren't interested. They're too busy crawling around looking for another caterpillar to crawl beside. They can't even conceive of what the butterfly is offering. And the butterfly can't go back to crawling. It's not a choice. The transformation is irreversible. You can't unknow what you know. You can't unsee what you've seen. Some of you might be thinking, well, what about two awakened people? Couldn't they have a relationship? But here's the beautiful thing. When two awakened people meet, they don't have a relationship in the conventional sense. They don't have that drama of separation and union, pushing and pulling, needing and fulfilling. They simply enjoy each other's company, moment by moment, with no story about past or future. They dance together without stepping on each other's toes because neither of them is trying to lead. It's not a relationship. It's a communion. But communion is rare. Most of the awakened souls you'll meet are wandering through a world of people still caught in the dream, still believing in their own separation, still hungry for that special someone to make them complete. And the awakened person looks at all this with tremendous compassion because they remember what it was like. They remember the hunger, the desperate searching, the belief that happiness was just one person away. They remember it like you might remember a dream you had as a child, vivid, but no longer real, no longer compelling. So they remain alone, in a sense. Not lonely, mind you. Loneliness is what you feel when you're a separate self longing for connection. The awakened person is never lonely because they're never really alone. They're always connected to everything. They're the ocean feeling itself as a wave. But they are solitary in the sense that very few people can meet them where they are. Most relationships require you to pretend to be smaller than you are, to squeeze yourself back into the costume of being a separate individual with needs and fears and ambition. The awakened person can't do that anymore. The costume doesn't fit. And so they live in this world, loving everyone and belonging to no one, available to all but possessed by none. And this is the secret price of awakening that nobody warns you about. You gain everything, the whole universe, in fact, and you lose the ability to play the game that makes most people feel alive. You become cosmically rich and romantically poor. You see the joke, but nobody's laughing with you. You are free, but freedom looks like loneliness to people who are still in chains. And yet, there's something utterly perfect about it, because the awakened person doesn't feel they're missing out. They're not sitting around wishing they could fall in love the way other people do. They're not lonely for companionship. There are times in life when you feel as though you have wandered off the map. You look around and nothing seems familiar. The signposts that once guided you are gone. The landmarks that once gave you confidence have vanished, and suddenly you are overcome with a strange disorientation. You may call it confusion, uncertainty, or despair, but beneath all those names is a single experience. You feel lost. To be lost is not simply to lack direction. It is to have once believed you knew where you were going, only to realize that the path has dissolved beneath your feet. And in that moment, everything you trusted begins to tremble. The career you thought would define you feels empty. The relationship you believed would complete you unravels. The ideals you clung to no longer hold weight. You stand in the middle of life's forest and see only trees, stretching endlessly with no clear way forward. At first, this can feel like failure. After all, we are taught from childhood that life is a journey with a clear destination, and that our task is to find the straightest route to that destination. Parents, teachers, leaders, and advertisements all hand us maps. They tell us, study hard, get the right job, marry the right person, accumulate wealth, and you will arrive safely at happiness. But sooner or later, many of us discover that these maps are faulty. They do not match the terrain. We follow them diligently, only to find ourselves in places we never wanted to be. And when the map fails us, we feel lost. Yet perhaps this sense of being lost is not the catastrophe it appears to be. Perhaps it is, in fact, a gift. For the truth is, the map was never the territory. It was only a picture, a sketch, a simplified story. The territory itself is always more vast, more wild, more unpredictable than any map can show. And when the map is torn away, frightening though it may be, we are at last forced to look at the territory with our own eyes. We discover reality directly, without the filter of borrowed instructions. Consider how a traveler might cling desperately to a guidebook, reading every detail and trying to match it to the streets of a city. But one day, the book is lost, and the traveler is forced to wander. At first, there is panic, but then, slowly, the city comes alive. Sights and sounds emerge that the book never mentioned. Hidden alleyways, unexpected encounters, uncharted beauty. What once seemed like disorientation becomes discovery. Being lost is the doorway to truly seeing, and so it may be with your own life. The disorientation you feel is not proof that you have failed, but proof that you are finally meeting reality as it is. You are no longer shielded by the maps of others, no longer protected by the certainty of borrowed truths. You are naked before the mystery, and though it is terrifying, it is also alive. To be lost is to be free of false guidance, free to wander, free to see freshly. Yet notice how hard it is to accept this. The mind clings to certainty like a child clings to a blanket. We would rather have a false map than no map at all. We would rather pretend we know than admit we do not. And so the moment of lostness feels unbearable. But look closer. The discomfort arises not from being lost itself, but from resisting it. The trees are only frightening because you demand a clear path. The silence is only heavy because you insist on constant noise. If you let yourself rest in the lostness, something begins to shift. Have you ever noticed how silence deepens when you stop straining to fill it? At first it is uncomfortable, but then it becomes rich, almost musical. In the same way, lostness becomes meaningful when you stop insisting on certainty. It becomes a vast openness, a space in which anything is possible. What felt like a dead end reveals itself as the edge of a larger horizon. You are not trapped, you are unmoored, and that is a very different thing. Think of a river. We often imagine it as having a single destination, flowing inevitably toward the sea, but along the way it meanders, branches, doubles back, floods and dries. If you stand on its banks at any given moment, you might say, this river is lost. It is wandering aimlessly. But from the larger view, it is simply the river being itself, finding its way through the land as it must. To be lost is only to be seen from too narrow a perspective. From the broader perspective, nothing is lost at all. So when you feel lost, what is really happening? You are awakening to the fact that life is not a straight road with a fixed destination. You are realizing that all the maps were temporary, that they could never contain the mystery of existence. And while this realization unsettles the mind, it liberates the heart. For then you no longer have to pretend. You no longer have to force yourself into paths that do not fit. You can allow yourself to wander, to question, to begin again. Lostness, then, is not the enemy of life. It is life breaking through the illusions you once clung to. It is reality reminding you that the point was never to arrive, but to move, to explore, to live. To be lost is to stand at the threshold of discovery, trembling perhaps, but also alive with possibility. And notice how, in those moments of disorientation, the smallest details become radiant. When the big picture collapses, the present moment comes to the foreground. You feel the air on your skin. You hear the rustle of leaves. You notice the rise and fall of your breath. The mind, stripped of its maps, returns to immediacy. And in that immediacy, you find a strange peace. For the present moment has no need for maps. It is complete in itself. In truth, you cannot be lost in the present. Lostness always refers to the future or the past. You say, I do not know where I am going, or I should not be where I am. But here, now, you are simply here. The ground supports you. The breath moves in and out. Life continues. To drop into the present is to see that lostness is only a thought, not a reality. And when that thought softens, what remains is not despair but wonder. So perhaps, rather than resisting lostness, you might welcome it. You might see it as an initiation, a necessary stage in awakening. For who has ever truly found themselves without first being lost? Who has ever discovered truth without first seeing the failure of illusion? The very word discover means to uncover, to remove what once covered over reality. Lostness removes the cover, and though the exposure is raw, it is also true. In the end, the feeling of being lost may be the most honest feeling of all, for it admits what is always the case, that we do not ultimately know where life is taking us. The certainty we cling to is a fragile construction. Lostness tears it away and reveals the vastness beyond. And in that vastness, you may find not the path you expected, but the path you needed. When the path disappears beneath your feet, when the signs no longer point the way, and when the horizon stretches endlessly in every direction, something remarkable begins to happen. You start to discover that being lost is not an obstacle to life, but part of its essence. For what does it mean to be found, if not to have first been lost? And what does it mean to have direction, if not to have wandered without one? To feel lost is to be placed at the heart of mystery, where life can no longer be reduced to neat explanations. The truth is, you were never truly in control of the journey. You imagined that you were choosing each step, plotting each destination, and charting each course. But look closely. Did you decide to be born? Did you choose your first breath, your first thought, your first desire? Life has been carrying you all along, flowing like a river that bends and turns without asking permission. To feel lost is simply to realize this, that the river does not always follow your map, but it always flows, always moves, always carries. And so, the moment of lostness is also the moment of truth. It is the place where the illusion of control begins to crack, where you see that you are not the little navigator steering through a dangerous sea, but the very sea itself, with all its waves and currents. The loss of certainty is the birth of freedom, for now you no longer need to force life to conform to your plans. You can begin to move with it, to surrender to its rhythm, to trust that it knows more than you ever could. This is what the ancient sages called wu wei, effortless action, flowing with the grain of things instead of against it. Imagine a dancer moving to music. The dancer does not plan each step in advance, nor does she fight the rhythm. She listens, responds, allows the body to be moved by the sound. In the same way, life invites you to dance with it. Lostness is the silence before the music begins, the pause that invites you to listen more deeply. And when you do, you may find yourself moving with a grace you did not know was possible. Think of how a bird flies. It does not calculate each gust of wind. each eddy of air, it spreads its wings and trusts the sky to hold it. Or think of how a wave rises on the ocean. It does not know where it will crest, nor when it will fall, yet it belongs perfectly to the movement of the whole. To feel lost is to realize that you, too, are like the bird and the wave carried by something larger, included in a pattern beyond comprehension. You do not need to know the way, because the way is already unfolding through you. And here is the paradox. It is often when you stop searching desperately for direction that direction appears. Have you noticed how solutions come most easily when you stop trying to force them? How clarity arises not in the frenzy of thought, but in the quiet of letting go. To be lost is to be emptied of old certainties, and in that emptiness, new possibilities emerge. The openness of lostness is the very ground in which discovery grows. But what is it that we discover in lostness? First, we discover that the self we thought we were, the one who must always know, always plan, always control, is not as solid as it seemed. You believed you were the driver behind the eyes, the thinker of thoughts, the chooser of actions, but in lostness, that image crumbles. You see that thoughts arise on their own, feelings come and go, choices present themselves like waves breaking on the shore. The you who was supposed to be in charge is nowhere to be found, and though this may seem frightening, it is also liberating. For if the little self is not in control, then the burden is lifted. Life can flow as it will, and you can rest. Second, we discover that lostness is not separation, but intimacy. When the map is gone, you are no longer looking at life from above, as though it were an object to be controlled. You are inside it, immersed, woven into every detail. The rustle of leaves, the sound of rain, the rhythm of breath, all of it surrounds you, includes you, moves with you. Lostness dissolves the distance between you and the world. You realize you were never a separate traveler moving through a foreign land. You are the land itself, the path itself, the very movement of the journey. And third, we discover that lostness is not permanent. It is a season, like winter, cold, perhaps harsh, but also necessary. For in winter the ground rests, the trees shed their leaves, and what seems like death is preparation for spring. To be lost is to enter a season of dormancy, of waiting, of gestation. It is not the end, but the pause before renewal. And when spring comes, when new paths open, you may see that the lostness was not wasted. It was the soil from which new life grew. So rather than resisting lostness, we might honor it. We might see it as part of the great rhythm of existence, the ebb and flow of knowing and not knowing, of clarity and confusion, of direction and wandering. Just as day and night belong together, just as tide and trough are inseparable, so too do foundness and lostness belong to one another. Without lostness, foundness would have no meaning. Without confusion, clarity would not shine. This is why many traditions speak of the dark night of the soul, a period of disorientation and emptiness that precedes awakening. It is not punishment, but preparation. It is the breaking open of the old, so that the new can enter. And so when you feel lost, you may trust that something is ripening beneath the surface, something that will emerge in its own time. You do not need to force it, any more than you can force a seed to sprout before it is ready. You need only wait, trust, and allow. And in that waiting, you may find a peace you did not expect. For when you no longer demand that life provide answers, you are free to rest in the questions themselves. To live without knowing is not a failure. It is a kind of faith, a willingness to let life unfold without clinging. And in that faith, you may find that you are never truly lost at all. You are always here, always part of the unfolding, always held in the great embrace of existence. Look around you now. Notice the space in which these words appear. Notice the sensations in your body, the rhythm of your breath, the subtle sounds in the room. In this immediacy, there is no lostness, There is only presence. The feeling of being lost arises only when the mind insists on a map, on a certainty about the future. But here, now, there is nothing missing. The ground holds you. The breath moves. Awareness shines. In this presence, the idea of being lost dissolves, and what remains is wholeness. And so, when you feel lost, remember this: it is not a mistake. It is not proof that you are broken or that you have failed. It is life guiding you away from false maps, away from borrowed truths, toward the discovery of something deeper. Lostness is not the absence of path, but the opening to a greater path, one that cannot be charted in advance, but only walked moment by moment. You are not lost. You are the universe playing at being lost, so that it may discover itself anew. You are the wave that rises, not knowing where it will fall, the bird that soars without a fixed destination, the traveler who finds beauty only when the guidebook is forgotten. You are the dance itself, and the music, and the silence between the notes. And when you see this, when you feel it, not just as an idea, but as a lived reality, then lostness becomes something altogether different. It becomes freedom, intimacy, and trust. You no longer cling to certainty, for you see that certainty was never real. You no longer fear confusion, for you see that confusion is part of the dance. You no longer resist lostness, for you see that lostness is the doorway to being found. So let yourself be lost. Let yourself wonder, question, doubt, and stumble. For in that very wandering, life is carrying you. In that very doubt, truth is ripening. In that very stumbling, the path is appearing. And in the end, you may discover that you were never lost at all, but always exactly where you needed to be. It begins quietly, almost imperceptibly, like a soft drift of shadow at the edge of light. A person who has always seen themselves as kind, honest, and good starts to make small compromises. Not out of malice, but out of necessity. A harmless lie here, a silent hesitation there. They tell themselves, this isn't who I am, this is just what must be done. And in that moment, a seed is planted not of evil, but of self-deception. No one wakes up one morning and decides to become cruel. The transformation never happens in a single act. It unfolds through countless moments when the truth of one's heart is exchanged for the comfort of being right. You see, the mind has a strange talent for justifying itself. It will twist, bend, and reshape reality until it can still look in the mirror and say, I am good. The descent begins the moment a person starts believing that goodness is something they can possess, rather than something they must continually rediscover. For when you claim to be good, you also create its opposite, someone else who must be bad. The moment you divide the world into us and them, the game has already begun. The darkness does not enter as hatred, but as certainty. The truth is, we become what we fear whenever we lose sight of our own shadow. Every human being carries within them both the saint and the serpent. But most people spend their lives denying this. They cling to the idea that only others could be cruel, only others could be unjust, only others could fall. And in that denial, the shadow grows stronger, unseen and unacknowledged, until one day it acts on its own. History, time and again, has shown this. Not through monsters who were born that way, but through ordinary people who stopped questioning themselves. A person begins to follow orders they disagree with because it feels easier than conflict. They remain silent while someone else suffers, convincing themselves it is not their place to intervene. Slowly, the conscience adapts. The voice that once shouted now whispers. And in the quiet, they begin to call obedience virtue. It is not that these people become evil. It is that they lose the capacity to see. Awareness collapses under the weight of justification. Once you convince yourself that your actions are for the greater good, almost anything can be done without guilt. Cruelty, when wrapped in purpose, can masquerade as righteousness. The human mind loves order. It wants to believe that if it follows rules, obeys systems, and respects authority, it will remain safe. But safety has always been a mirage. When a person stops thinking for themselves, when they surrender their inner compass to someone else's map, they are no longer alive in the full sense. They have become a fragment of someone else's idea. And yet, you can't blame them entirely. Most people are not cruel because they enjoy it. They are cruel because they believe they must be. Under enough pressure, fear, or belonging, the line between right and wrong begins to blur. When your survival, status, or comfort depends on silence, silence begins to sound like morality. The mind says, I had no choice. But there is always a choice, it's just that some are more painful than others. The moment you avoid pain at all costs, you also avoid truth. Because truth is rarely comfortable, and goodness is rarely easy. Look closely, and you will see that corruption begins not in grand betrayals, but in tiny moments of self-abandonment. You tell yourself, I'll speak up next time. I'll do what's right when the stakes are higher. But the soul doesn't erode in one collapse, it erodes in quiet increments. A man becomes dishonest the day he starts believing that honesty must wait for a better time. There is another force at work, subtler, but far more dangerous, the need to belong. Human beings will do almost anything to avoid feeling isolated, and so they conform. They agree to things they do not believe in. They laugh at cruelty to avoid being outcast. They obey the unspoken rules of the tribe, even when those rules betray their heart. Because belonging feels safer than conscience. But the cost of belonging, when bought at the expense of awareness, is the slow disintegration of the self. This is why some of the darkest acts in history were not done by villains, but by people who simply wanted to fit in. They called it loyalty, duty, or patriotism, words that sound noble, but can hide deep fear. They forgot that morality is not obedience to authority, it is obedience to truth. When the crowd moves in one direction, the temptation to follow is overwhelming. The human mind, desperate not to stand alone, convinces itself that the majority must be right. It takes great courage to question what everyone else accepts, to refuse the comfort of belonging for the discomfort of awareness. But awareness is the only soil in which integrity can grow. You see, we often think of evil as a deliberate act, a conscious choice to harm. But most evil arises from unconsciousness. It grows wherever people stop noticing what they're doing, or why. It creeps in through habit, through convenience, through the dulling of sensitivity. That is how the good lose their way, not through malice, but through mechanical living. The tragedy is not that people fall, but that they fall while believing they are standing upright. The most dangerous illusion is righteousness, because it blinds you to your own shadow. When you believe you are unquestionably good, you stop examining your motives. You stop listening to others. You start defending your identity instead of discovering truth. And so, slowly, the person who once helped others begins to justify harm. They say, it's for their own good. The one who once valued honesty learns to deceive themselves. The one who once stood for compassion begins to believe that cruelty is necessary. And all the while, they continue to see themselves as good. This is the quiet tragedy of human nature, that the very desire to be good can lead to blindness. Because when you cling too tightly to one side of yourself, you create the very darkness you hope to escape. You separate the world into pure and impure, righteous and wicked, and in doing so, you build a prison for your own awareness. Every human being is capable of this. You and I are no exception. The potential for cruelty, deceit, and self-deception exists in all of us. But so does the potential for awareness, compassion, and truth. The difference lies not in what we are, but in how awake we are to ourselves. So perhaps the real question isn't, how do good people become bad, but rather, when do they stop being aware of who they are? Because when awareness fades, anything becomes possible, and not always for the better. If you look deeply enough, you will see that the struggle between good and evil is not a battle between people, but a conflict within consciousness itself. Every person is born with both the impulse to create and the impulse to destroy. The difference between the two is not in the heart, but in the level of awareness guiding it. When awareness sleeps, goodness becomes mechanical. It turns into habit, into performance, into self-image. And when goodness becomes unconscious, it easily transforms into its opposite. What we call evil is often simply goodness without light, action without reflection. It is the mind acting without seeing. And this blindness, this absence of awareness, is far more dangerous than malice. Because the one who knows he is cruel may still awaken, but the one who believes he is righteous will never question his own hand. So how does one remain awake in a world that constantly tempts us to sleep? How does one live without becoming what one fears? It begins with remembering that no one is entirely one thing. You cannot divide yourself into pure and impure, as though light and shadow were separate entities. They are two faces of the same being. To deny the shadow is to give it power. To look at it clearly, to admit, I too am capable of harm, is to take its power away. This is the first safeguard, awareness of your own potential for darkness. When you know that you can be cruel, you also know when cruelty begins to rise within you. You can see it before it acts, before it speaks, before it finds justification. You cannot transform what you refuse to acknowledge. Most people, however, do not want to see this part of themselves. They spend their lives polishing the mask of goodness while the shadow grows behind it. They mistake reputation for integrity, image for substance. But integrity has nothing to do with how you appear to others. It is how honestly you see yourself. The second safeguard is the courage to question your justifications. The mind will always find a reason to excuse its behavior. They deserved it, I had no choice. It's for the greater good. These are the whispers of self-deception. Each time you hear them, pause. Ask, am I protecting truth or protecting my image of myself? Because truth does not need protection. Only ego does. If you notice carefully, you will find that self-deception thrives in haste. When you rush, when you act under pressure, when you obey without reflection, you create the perfect conditions for blindness. That is why all awareness begins in stillness. When you stop reacting long enough to see clearly, life reveals its patterns. You begin to notice the subtle moment when kindness turns to pity, when conviction turns to arrogance, when belonging turns to obedience. You begin to sense how easily the good heart can harden when it feels threatened. Awareness does not prevent darkness from appearing, but it prevents you from confusing it with light. There is also another force, perhaps the most powerful of all, that protects the heart from corruption: empathy. Not the sentimental kind that we offer only to those we like, but the deeper empathy that recognizes itself in others. When you can feel another person's fear, confusion, or pain, you remember that they are not so different from you. It becomes difficult to harm what you can see yourself in. This is why systems that seek to control people always begin by reducing empathy. They divide, label, and dehumanize. They make the other seem distant or inferior, so that conscience no longer interferes with action. But awareness reverses this process. It brings the other close again. It reminds you that behind every face is the same trembling mystery that looks through your own eyes. When empathy returns, morality is no longer a set of rules. It becomes a natural response of the heart. You do not need commandments to stop you from cruelty when you can feel its echo within yourself. The third safeguard is moral courage. Awareness without courage can become passive. It can see clearly, but still choose comfort over truth. True awareness demands the willingness to act when silence would be easier. It asks you to lose what is safe in order to remain whole. This is not about grand heroism. It is about the quiet, ordinary moments when integrity costs you something. When you speak up though your voice shakes. When you refuse to join in cruelty, even when everyone else is laughing. When you admit your fault instead of defending your pride. Each time you do this, you reclaim a small part of your freedom. The strength to do this does not come from discipline or ideology. It comes from humility. You begin to see that you are not separate from those you judge. The same forces that corrupt others live in you as potential. The only difference is whether you are awake to them. This humility gives rise to compassion, not the weak kind that tolerates everything, but the wise kind that understands. When you understand why people fall, you no longer stand above them, you stand beside them. And from that position, you can help. You see, it is not the darkness that destroys the world. It is unconsciousness. The good person who stops noticing, the just person who stops reflecting, the kind person who stops questioning. Evil does not need hatred to thrive. It only needs forgetfulness. But when you see something remarkable happens, you begin to sense the fragile beauty of human nature. How easy it is to lose balance, and how miraculous it is that we ever find it. You start to forgive, not to excuse, but because you recognize yourself in every fall and every redemption. If you can hold this awareness, you will see that the line between good and evil is not a wall dividing people. It is a thread running through every heart. The task of life is not to stand on one side of it, but to walk it, awake. And when you walk that line consciously, you discover a secret. The light that keeps you from falling is not perfection. It is honesty. The willingness to look within and say, yes, I am capable of anything, but I choose awareness. So in the end, perhaps good and evil are not opposites at all. They are the two movements of a single dance, the contraction and expansion of consciousness itself. When you cling to one and reject the other, you lose your rhythm. When you see both as part of the same whole, you begin to move freely again. The one who understands this no longer fears his shadow. He can walk through the world without armor, because he has nothing left to defend. He knows that monsters are not born, they are forgotten selves. And when you remember who you truly are, when you see that even your darkness belongs to the light, the monster dissolves. Not because you conquered it, but because you finally turned to face it. There comes a time when even your will begins to tremble. You've been pushing for so long that you can't quite remember what it felt like not to. Every morning you wake up and there is that quiet command inside your head to try again, to improve, to hold yourself together. You tell yourself you have no choice, that stopping would mean failure, that rest must be earned. But somewhere deep down, you can feel that you're becoming tired in a different way now. Not the tiredness that sleep fixes, but the kind that touches your bones, the kind that whispers, enough. Most people believe exhaustion comes from doing too much, but that's not quite true. It comes from doing what was never really yours to do. It comes from carrying identities that don't fit, from keeping promises you never actually made, from fighting to be someone you think you should be. Life was never meant to feel like constant resistance, yet somehow we've turned even peace into a project. The modern mind has made effort into a virtue. We are told that every good thing must be earned: happiness, love, rest, even awakening. You must meditate correctly, breathe correctly, forgive correctly, live correctly. But this idea of correctness is precisely what keeps you tense. You start to treat existence like an exam, checking whether you're passing or failing at being alive. And the more you check, the more life slips through your fingers. There's a story I like about a man who went to a wise teacher and said, "I want to be at peace." The teacher smiled and said, "Drop the I, that's ego. Drop the want, that's desire. What's left? The man sat in silence for a long while. What was left was peace itself. You see, it's not that you don't know how to rest. It's that you've forgotten that resting doesn't require permission. The tree doesn't negotiate with the wind before it sways. The river doesn't ask if it's flowing correctly. Only the human mind questions its right to be at ease. When you've been trying for too long, your own being begins to rebel. That rebellion doesn't come as anger or loudness. It comes as numbness, as disinterest, as quiet fatigue. The body begins to slow down. The spirit stops answering your ambitions, and everything feels dull. You call it burnout, but it's really honesty. It's life saying, I cannot pretend anymore. And yet, even here, the habit to strive continues. You start to think, I must recover quickly, or I'll rest just enough to go back to working hard again. But true rest isn't preparation for more effort. True rest is the recognition that effort was never needed. You have been breathing life as though it were a job. You've been trying to keep the rhythm going, believing that if you stop, something terrible will happen. But life has been breathing you all along. When you stop forcing, the breath continues. When you stop controlling, the heart still beats. This is the beginning of understanding that trying is not the same as living. There's a strange beauty in realizing that you don't have to keep the world spinning. It spins on its own. You don't have to hold everything together. The universe already knows how. Think about a flower. It does not strain to bloom. It doesn't calculate when to open. It feels the warmth of the sun, and something inside it simply unfolds. That's what you are not the one making things happen, but the one being unfolded by life itself. So when you find yourself exhausted but unable to stop trying, you can begin by simply watching the trying. Don't try to quit trying, just notice it. Watch how the mind says, keep moving, keep fixing, keep improving, and see it as a habit, not a truth. In that watching, something miraculous happens. Awareness itself begins to rest. You realize that effort is a kind of resistance, a way of saying, life, you are not yet good enough. But what if life never needed to be improved? What if the moment you stop resisting it, it already becomes perfect, not in the moral sense, but in the whole sense? Trying to perfect life is like polishing a wave. The more you touch it, the more it scatters. When you stop meddling, the surface of the water becomes clear again, and in that clarity, you finally see what was always there, yourself, not as a worker or a seeker or a struggler, but as awareness itself. Awareness is effortless. It doesn't need to maintain itself. It doesn't wake up in the morning and say, I must continue being aware. It simply is. And that's the truth of who you are. You are not the effort, you are the space in which effort happens. The exhaustion you feel isn't a failure, it's a doorway. It's the body's way of guiding you home. It says, come back, stop running, nothing is chasing you. And when you listen to that invitation, something shifts quietly inside. The muscles unclench, the breath deepens, the mind stops asking what comes next. For a few brief moments, you're not a project, not a person trying to become. And when you listen to that invitation, something shifts quietly inside. The muscles unclench, the breath deepens. The mind stops asking what comes next. For a few brief moments, you're not a project, not a person trying to become. You're simply being. And that simple being, unadorned and unforced, is what you've been searching for all along. You don't have to earn rest. You are made of it. You don't have to deserve peace. You are already peace, temporarily disguised as a tired human being trying to remember where it went. When you understand that, the world doesn't need to change for you to rest. The circumstances don't have to improve. The people around you don't need to behave differently. You just have to stop holding your breath long enough to remember that life is not waiting for you to catch up. It has been carrying you the entire time. The beauty of surrender is that nothing actually stops. Everything continues, but without strain. You still work, you still love, you still face challenges, but they flow through you instead of against you. You begin to act from ease rather than toward it. And that, perhaps, is the quiet secret of all spiritual exhaustion. It isn't a curse. It's the universe's way of making you tired of pretending that you are in control. There's a moment that comes after long fatigue when even thought becomes soft. The voice that once urged you forward begins to lose its conviction. It still speaks, but its words don't land quite the same way. You should be doing more, it says. But it sounds almost tired of hearing itself. You start to notice the absurdity of how long you've been obeying it. You remember the countless times you pushed yourself because you believed something waited at the end of the road, the perfect day, the perfect peace, the perfect version of yourself. But the further you went, the more you realized there was no finish line, only a looping horizon. Every goal melted into the next one, and the moment you reached what you thought would be relief, your mind whispered, just one more step. You see, the game of self-improvement never ends because it feeds on its own dissatisfaction. It survives by convincing you that who you are right now is not enough. And as long as you believe that voice, you will never rest, not even for a breath. So the first act of wisdom is not to conquer that voice, but to recognize it for what it is, habit. It is not life itself. It is the echo of a world that believes worth is measured by motion. Every culture has its myth of progress. In the modern one, progress became a moral duty. We build faster machines, we write longer lists, we measure success by the number of things done rather than the depth with which anything was lived. Even spirituality was infected by this fever. Meditation became another race, another ladder to climb. But awareness does not improve through struggle. It simply notices. The moment you see the trap, you are already free from it. Try this sometime. Sit for a few minutes and allow yourself to do nothing. Don't even call it meditation. Just sit. You'll notice almost immediately how the mind resists. It says, I should be using this time. I should be productive. Watch that urge as if it belonged to a stranger. You'll see that effort is not your nature, it's conditioning. When you stop obeying it, something ancient begins to breathe again inside you, the quiet intelligence of rest. Look at animals. They don't rest because they've finished their to-do list. They rest because the sun is warm, because the moment invites them. They act when there is movement, and they lie still when there isn't. That rhythm, that effortless alignment with the pulse of existence, is what humans once knew before they became afraid of stillness. To be still in this world is to appear useless, and nothing terrifies the ego more than uselessness. It thrives on proving itself. Yet usefulness is temporary, while being is eternal. When you let go of the need to prove your worth, you begin to rediscover wonder. You see how much of life you've missed by trying to justify your place in it. The color of the sky, the sound of your own breathing, the subtle hum of aliveness that has always been present, these return when striving subsides. And in that rediscovery, gratitude awakens. Not the kind you list in a journal, but the kind that happens wordlessly, like a flower opening at dawn. You don't say, I am grateful. You simply feel the quiet joy of existence. That joy does not depend on success or progress. It arises from the simple permission to be. When you understand that, even tiredness feels different. You no longer resent it. You let the body rest, the mind drift, and you see that exhaustion was never your enemy, it was your teacher. It came to show you the limits of control. It came to whisper, now, stop, you've done enough. You see, effort is not wrong. It's just not meant to be permanent. It's a wave that must fall back into the ocean. The problem begins when we try to hold the wave in place, when we try to live in perpetual crest. Life breathes in and out. There are times for expansion and times for surrender. The wise person does not cling to one or the other. They move with the rhythm. as a dancer moves with the music. When you finally allow yourself to stop, you may feel fear at first. The silence can seem heavy. The stillness may feel like a void. But if you stay long enough, you realize the void isn't empty, it's full. Full of everything you were too busy to notice. Full of the pulse of being, the quiet hum of awareness itself. And then the most natural thing happens, energy returns. But now it flows differently. It no longer burns from tension, it moves from ease. You begin to act without forcing. Things get done, not through pushing, but through participation. You are no longer the worker dragging the load, you are the current carrying the boat. This is what the Taoists meant by Wu Wei, action without effort, movement without strain. It isn't laziness, it's precision. It's the intelligence of water flowing exactly where it needs to go. So when you feel that you cannot stop trying, do not fight it. See it, smile at it. Let the exhaustion do its work on you. Let it soften your pride. Let it show you how unnecessary most of your inner battles were. Eventually you will find that you can rest even while moving, that effort itself can become ease. And when that happens, life stops feeling like something to manage. It becomes something to experience. You realize that rest was never the reward at the end of the path, it was the path itself. The truth is beautifully simple. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to be carried. You are allowed to be ordinary, unaccomplished, unfinished, and still completely whole. When you finally believe that, exhaustion turns to peace. And peace is what you were trying to find by working so hard all along. There's a peculiar lightness that appears when the struggle finally dissolves. You wake up one morning and realize that the world hasn't changed, but your grip on it has loosened. The same work waits on the table. The same people expect your attention. The same sounds move through the day. Yet, something invisible is gone, that constant sense of being late to your own life. This is what true rest feels like. Not absence of motion, but absence of resistance. The river still flows, the seasons still turn, but now you are moving with them instead of against them. You begin to notice that life was never meant to be wrestled into submission. It was meant to be danced with. When you stop pulling, it stops pulling back. It's strange how this understanding arrives. It doesn't come from new knowledge, but from finally growing tired of your own tension. You no longer need to convince life to cooperate. You start to trust that it already knows where to go. And in that trust, something ancient begins to return, the natural rhythm that was always beneath the noise. You eat when hungry, sleep when tired, speak when words come, stay silent when they don't. It feels simple, almost childlike, as if the universe has taken over the task of living. The mind doesn't like this at first. It's too quiet. It doesn't have metrics for ease. It asks, am I doing it right? And life replies, there's nothing to do right. There's only what's happening. When you understand that, even your problems begin to breathe. They stop being heavy walls and start becoming passing weather. You don't deny them. You just stop identifying with them. You realize that you were never the storm. You were the sky. And the sky doesn't get tired of holding the clouds. It just lets them move. You start to see that exhaustion was never the problem, control was. You were never tired from doing too much. You were tired from trying to dictate how things should be. The effort to control is subtle. It hides inside even the most noble intentions. You try to control your emotions so that you can be spiritual, your image so that you can be loved, your destiny so that you can feel safe. But the more you try, the further you drift from the effortless intelligence that has been guiding life since the beginning. Look at the trees again. They don't manage their growth. They don't consult a plan before sprouting. Their perfection lies in their lack of strategy. They trust the soil, the rain, the sun. They let the universe grow them. And this, you see, is what the universe is doing with you. You are being grown. All the strain, all the seeking, All the fatigue, they were not mistakes, but growing pains. You were learning to let life do what it does best. You were learning to stop pretending that you are separate from its flow. Once this is seen, the world begins to look softer. You no longer judge people for being asleep or awake, strong or weak, disciplined or chaotic. You see that everyone is simply being lived by the same current, each at their own pace, each in their own shape. The need to compare dissolves, the envy fades, the guilt quiets, because now you understand that nobody is behind and nobody is ahead. There is no race. When that realization sinks in, gratitude rushes in like air into lungs that have been held too long. You start to love again, not in the sentimental way, but as a quiet recognition that everything belongs. You find beauty in the ordinary, the way sunlight touches the sink, the sound of a kettle boiling, the tired laugh of a stranger on the bus. These small things were always holy. You were just too busy chasing bigger ones to notice. This is what rest does. It restores vision. You begin to see that the sacred was never elsewhere. It was in the pauses between thoughts, in the stillness between breaths, in the overlooked simplicity of existing. And because you finally stop rushing, life starts to show you its secret patterns. You begin to see how even the difficult moments were part of your unfolding. The heartbreaks, the failures, the sleepless nights, none of them wasted. Each was carving space for something deeper to grow. There's a softness that comes with seeing this, a tenderness toward everything you once resisted. You stop dividing your experience into good and bad. It's all movement now, all expression. Rest becomes your natural state, not because you avoid work or silence your ambition, but because you finally see that even effort can be effortless when it flows from being. When you cook, you simply cook. When you speak, you simply speak. When you rest, you truly rest. Nothing stands in the way. It's not that life becomes easier, it becomes truer. The most surprising part of this transformation is that it doesn't make you passive, it makes you alive. You act more clearly because you are no longer acting from fear. You create, but not to prove anything. You help others, not because you should, but because the impulse to give rises naturally from peace. You realize that when you were striving, you were actually trying to find permission to live. And now that permission has been given not by the world, but by your own awareness. The irony is beautiful. You spent years trying to reach a place that was never absent. The one who was seeking rest was made of rest all along. That understanding doesn't require effort to maintain. Once seen, it sustains itself. And so, you walk differently now. You breathe differently. Even your tiredness feels sacred. You know that when fatigue comes again, it's not punishment. It's just another reminder to pause and return. The world continues to move fast, chaotic, demanding. But within you, there is a still point, a place untouched by hurry, a place that whispers, all is well, even when it isn't. That's the gift exhaustion came to give you. Not weakness, but wisdom. The wisdom of remembering that you don't have to be the one doing life. Life is doing you, and it's doing it beautifully. Most of us live as though time were a straight line, stretching from the distant past, through the fleeting present, into the unknown future. We are taught to imagine ourselves as travelers along this line, beginning with birth, moving through childhood, adulthood, and finally ending at death. And because we see it this way, we spend much of our lives trying to get somewhere else. We long to reach the next point on the line, the promotion, the relationship, the success, the retirement, as if the meaning of our existence always lies just ahead. But what if this picture is entirely wrong? What if time is not a line at all, but a trick of perception, a useful convention that we mistake for reality? What if the past and the future are not places we can ever truly visit, but rather ideas, shadows, abstractions that exist only in thought? Consider the past. You may remember it vividly. The warmth of your childhood home, the smell of your grandmother's cooking, the sound of laughter echoing in a familiar room. But where is that now? You cannot hold it, you cannot touch it. It exists only as a memory, a trace in the present mind. And the future, the great destination we are all hurrying toward, is even more elusive. It has never arrived. And when it does, it is no longer the future. It is simply another present moment, just as ordinary, just as immediate as this one. So the only reality you ever truly know is the present. And yet, how rarely do we inhabit it? Instead, we live in stories about the past and fantasies about the future, carrying regrets and anxieties like heavy luggage on a journey that never leaves the station. Time, then, is not so much a thing, but a way of thinking. It is a lens through which we view change, a measurement we impose on the flow of experience. The clock ticks, the calendar flips, and we believe we are moving forward, step by step. But in truth, the movement is not in time. The movement is in ourselves. The present moment is eternal. It never began, and it will never end. What changes is our attention, our awareness, shifting like the beam of a flashlight over the vast field of now. If you look carefully, you will notice that you never experience time itself. You experience only sensations, thoughts, emotions, each one arising and fading within this moment. You do not live in yesterday or tomorrow. You live only here. Yesterday is a thought now. Tomorrow is a thought now. Even the idea of now is a thought happening now. To say time is an illusion is not to say that clocks are useless or that schedules do not function. It is to say that the reality we imagine time to be a great river carrying us along is not what we actually experience. What we experience is more like music. A melody does not exist all at once, as notes on a page. It exists in the playing, in the sounding of one note after another. And yet, the meaning of the melody is never in one note alone, but in the relationship between them. Likewise, life is not a series of isolated moments, but a flowing rhythm. And in that rhythm, the only place you ever stand is the present. But we resist this truth because we are addicted to becoming. We want to be something more than what we are now. We say, one day I'll be happy. One day I'll arrive. And in chasing that arrival, we miss the only arrival there has ever been. For when you look closely, you see that there is no traveler and no line of time. There is only the eternal unfolding of this very moment. Think of it like a wave in the ocean. You might say the wave begins here and ends there. But in reality, the wave is not a thing separate from the ocean, it is the ocean waving. In the same way, what you call your life in time is simply the universe presenting itself. There is no separate you moving through time. There is only the eternal dance of being, taking this shape and then that, rising and falling, just as waves rise and fall in the sea. And if this is so, then death itself is not the end of time, because there was never a personal timeline to begin with. Death is simply another change of form within the eternal now. What you are, in truth, is not bound by the calendar or the clock. You are the present awareness in which all of these things appear. When you see this clearly, an extraordinary freedom opens. For if there is no past holding you and no future binding you, then what is there to fear? What is there to regret? Every burden you carry is only a thought, a story, a memory. And every hope you chase is only a dream, a fantasy, an expectation. None of it has ever been realer than the sensations in your body, the sound of my voice, the beating of your heart right now. And so the invitation is simple. Awaken to this present, not as a stepping stone to somewhere else, but as the very essence of life. For the illusion of time is that it tempts us to live everywhere but here. And the truth of life is that here is all there has ever been. We live in a culture that worships the clock. Our days are chopped into hours, our hours into minutes, our minutes into seconds. We rise when the alarm rings, we eat by the schedule, we work by the calendar, and when the evening comes, we collapse into bed to prepare for another cycle. Life becomes a timetable, a program to be run. And so we mistake the measure for the thing measured. We believe that time is real because we have become servants of the instruments designed to track it. But tell me, have you ever touched a minute? Have you ever seen an hour lying on the street? These are not realities. They are symbols, abstractions, agreements we made with one another to coordinate our lives, and yet we live as though they were masters, as though they held power over our very being. This creates a peculiar anxiety, because if time is real, then it is always running out. Each tick of the clock becomes a step toward loss of youth, loss of opportunity, loss of life itself. We chase after time the way a dog chases its tail, never catching it, never resting. And so we speak of killing time, of wasting time, of saving time, as though time was some great treasure stored in a vault. But time cannot be saved, nor wasted, nor killed. It can only be imagined. You see, the future you are hurrying toward will never come. When it does, it will not be the future, it will be now. And the past you cling to has already dissolved, except as a thought arising here. This present moment is not something moving along a line, like a bead sliding on a string. It is the whole string itself, appearing as a bead for a moment, then another, and another, yet never leaving the fullness of being. The more you chase after what is not here, the more you miss the wonder, that island. It is like standing in the middle of a garden, surrounded by flowers in bloom, and yet staring at your watch, waiting for the right moment to look up. The flowers do not wait, they open now. But perhaps the greatest trick of time is the way it builds the illusion of a separate self. For we imagine ourselves as entities with a beginning in the past and an ending in the future, stretched like a thread across the loom of time. We say, I was born then, and I will die then. But look closely. You never experienced your birth. You will never experience your death. You know only this moment, and in this moment, you are not a fixed identity. You are an ever-changing pattern of sensations, thoughts, and perceptions, none of which remain for more than a fleeting instant. So, who, then, are you? You are not the child you once were, for that child exists only in memory. You are not the elder you imagine becoming, for that image exists only in fantasy. You are not even the you of a moment ago, for that thought has already vanished. You are, in truth, the awareness in which all of these forms appear and disappear. You are the timeless witness of time's illusion. When this realization dawns, a curious thing happens. Life ceases to feel like a journey with a destination and begins to feel like music being played. You no longer listen to the symphony in order to reach the final note, for the value is in the unfolding of the melody. You no longer dance to arrive at some final step, for the joy is in the movement itself. And so you see that existence is not a race to be won, but a song to be sung, a dance to be danced, endlessly, without purpose other than itself. To live without being bound by time is not to abandon all plans or calendars. It is simply to remember that these are conveniences, not truths. You may still make an appointment, but you no longer mistake the appointment for life itself. You may still mark a birthday, but you no longer believe you are merely the number of years measured. For you know that what you truly are is beyond all measurement, beyond all counting. You are the timeless presence in which time appears. And when you live from this recognition, something profound shifts. The anxiety of running out, the fear of missing out, The constant hunger for the next moment, all of this softens. You begin to see that you have never left this moment, and you never will. Eternity is not a long stretch of endless time. Eternity is the absence of time. Eternity is now. So do not wait for the future to give you what you already possess. Do not cling to the past as though it could return. Look instead at what is here. Feel the breath as it enters and leaves. Hear the sounds as they arise and fall. Notice the thoughts as they flicker and vanish. All of it is happening in the only place it could, this eternal present. And once you see this, time becomes play. You can wear a watch, you can follow a schedule, you can meet a deadline, but you do it lightly, knowing it is all part of the dance. For beneath it all, the truth is unchanged. There is no past, there is no future, there is only the miracle of now. And in that miracle, you are free. There comes a moment, often quietly, when you realize you no longer know what you're doing. Not in the sense that you've forgotten your plans, but in the deeper sense when all the plans you've made stop making sense. You wake up one morning, and though nothing looks different, everything feels different. The job, the relationships, the daily routines, all the things that once gave you a sense of direction suddenly feel hollow, like a script you've memorized but no longer believe in. And the strangest thing about it is that it doesn't always come with sadness. Sometimes it's just a blankness, a strange, gentle emptiness where the meaning used to be. You move through your day as though underwater, hearing people speak, watching yourself respond, but somewhere inside knowing that none of it feels alive anymore. This is the moment when most people panic, because for so long we've been taught that purpose is everything, that life must always be aimed towards something, a goal, a mission, a destination. We spend years building an identity around what we do, what we achieve, what we produce. So when the compass stops pointing anywhere, it feels like the end of something essential. But it isn't the end. It's the beginning. You see, this confusion, this uncertainty, is not a mistake in the system. It is the system. Life has a way of dissolving the structures we outgrow. It takes away the illusions we cling to until we finally notice that they were illusions. It removes the things we think we can't live without, and in doing so, reveals that we were never living through them to begin with. To not know what you're doing anymore is to stand at the threshold of a deeper truth, because only when the outer purpose collapses can the inner purpose emerge. Only when you stop knowing with your mind can you start listening with your being. Most people try to escape this stage. They distract themselves, fill the silence with noise, or rush to find a new project, a new meaning, a new dream to chase. But the more you run, the more lost you become. The feeling doesn't leave because it isn't meant to. It's not a symptom of something wrong. It's an invitation, a call from life itself to stop pretending you're in control. Think of the ocean. When the waves crash, the surface looks chaotic, unpredictable. But deep down, the water is still. When you lose your sense of direction, you are being pulled downward into that stillness. The storm of the mind begins to lose its power, and something quieter begins to appear beneath it. But because we've spent our lives identifying with the storm, we fear the calm. The mind says, if I stop chasing, I'll fall behind. If I stop knowing, I'll disappear. Yet the truth is that the one who feels lost was never the real you. The self that needs direction is only the surface self, the mask that performs for the world. The one beneath it doesn't need direction at all, because it never left home. This is why the ancient teachers spoke of the power of not knowing. Because to not know is to become teachable again. It is to return to innocence, not ignorance, but openness. The kind of awareness a child has when they look at the world without trying to control it. When you are no longer certain of what you're doing, life begins to show you what it's been doing all along. You begin to see that things move by themselves, that the heart beats, the lungs breathe, the planets spin, the seasons change, all without your interference. You begin to realize that the world is not asking you to manage it, it's asking you to participate in it, and there's a vast difference between the two. Participation means allowing yourself to be moved by life, not pushing it forward with effort and will. It's dancing with the rhythm rather than dictating the steps. And that's why losing your sense of direction can feel so disorienting, because you're shifting from being the choreographer to being the dancer. When you reach this stage, the mind tries to bargain. It says, if I can just understand what's happening, I'll feel safe again. But life doesn't owe you understanding. It offers you something far more profound experience. And understanding comes later, in the quiet moments when you realize that what felt like loss was actually transformation in disguise. Every meaningful change begins in confusion. Caterpillars do not know they are becoming butterflies. They simply dissolve. The same is true for you. The life you thought you were building is dissolving so that a more truthful one can emerge, not designed by your mind, but discovered by your being. So, when you find yourself in that fog, don't rush to clear it. Sit with it. Let it unfold at its own pace, because that fog is not a failure of clarity. It's the very process by which clarity arrives. You might look around and think everyone else knows what they're doing, but they don't. They're just better at pretending. Most people are following scripts written by fear of being left behind, fear of insignificance, fear of stillness. You, however, have stepped off the stage. You've stopped acting long enough to hear the silence beneath the performance. And though it feels uncertain now, that silence is where the real music begins. Because the truth is, you don't need to know what you're doing to live a meaningful life. You only need to be here, aware, receptive, willing. The rest unfolds naturally. Think of how flowers bloom. They don't calculate the right moment. They open when the sun touches them. The same intelligence that moves the tides and births the stars is guiding your unfolding too. It doesn't need your constant interference. It needs your trust. This is the paradox of awakening, that we try so hard to find meaning, not realizing that meaning is what's trying to find us. It's been knocking on your door, waiting for you to stop rearranging the furniture long enough to hear it. You are not lost. You are simply being stripped of what can no longer come with you. And if you can stay open even when it hurts, even when it's unclear, you'll notice something miraculous happening. You'll stop trying to force the river and begin to flow with it. You'll realize that life was never something to solve, but something to experience. And then, without warning, you'll find yourself smiling again, not because you figured it out, but because you finally stopped trying to. You'll see that you were never meant to know every step of the path. You were only meant to walk it, one moment at a time, with wonder instead of control, with openness instead of certainty. And in that simple surrender, you'll rediscover something you forgot long ago, that not knowing is the most alive state there is. Because when you don't know what you're doing anymore, you are closer than ever to remembering who you really are. There comes a quiet moment after the confusion, when something in you stops struggling to make sense of it all. The mind, exhausted from trying to understand, begins to soften. And in that softening, you start to notice that life is still happening beautifully, rhythmically, indifferently. The trees still sway, the clouds still move. The wind still carries the scent of the earth. The same world that felt meaningless yesterday now begins to breathe with a strange kind of peace. Because the truth is, meaning never left you. You just buried it under the noise of needing to be someone. You thought purpose was something you could think your way into, when in fact it was something you could only return to. It was always there, beneath the tension, beneath the pretending, waiting for you to stop trying so hard to deserve it. There is an intelligence far older than your mind that has been guiding you since before you were born. It beats your heart, it grows your bones, it keeps you alive even when you forget to live. It doesn't need your permission or your plan. It only asks for your attention, not the kind that analyzes, but the kind that sees. you begin to realize that you were never supposed to figure life out, only to experience it fully. You were never supposed to have it all together. You were supposed to fall apart again and again until you saw that there was never anything to hold together in the first place. The falling was always part of the dance. When you stop trying to control the dance, life starts moving through you like music. You stop counting the steps. You start to feel the rhythm. And somewhere between the notes, between the breaths, you remember what you are. You are not the dancer. You are the dance itself. But this realization doesn't arrive with fireworks or revelation. It comes quietly, like the first light before dawn. You notice you're no longer rushing to escape yourself. You're no longer trying to trade this moment for another. You're simply here breathing, watching, existing. And that, you realize, has always been enough. You start to see that the moments you once called meaningless were never empty. They were simply unobserved. Life wasn't waiting to become significant. You were waiting to become present. And in that presence, even the smallest things begin to glow, the way sunlight dances on water, the way laughter spills out of nowhere, the way time slows down when you stop wishing it would move faster. These are not ordinary moments. They are the fabric of life itself, woven together by a quiet intelligence that asks for nothing in return. You once thought you needed a map to live. Now you realize you only needed to look around. You once believed you needed to understand your path. Now you see that the path itself was understanding you. Every detour, every delay, every collapse, it was all part of life's mysterious way of leading you home. You see, when you no longer know what you're doing, you finally allow life to do what it's been doing all along. You begin to trust the current instead of fighting it. You begin to rest, not in certainty, but in faith, not the kind of faith that believes in something, but the kind that simply allows everything. And it's here, in this quiet permission, that your life begins to breathe again. Because the truth is, clarity doesn't come from understanding everything. It comes from accepting that you never will. Peace doesn't come from solving your problems. It comes from seeing that you are not a problem to solve. When you stop forcing yourself into shapes that please the world, you realize the world was never asking you to change. It was only reflecting back your own misunderstanding of who you are. You are not behind. You are not lost. You are not late to anything. You are exactly where you were always meant to be in this moment, aware, alive, unfolding. And perhaps that's what you were meant to learn all along, that life was never about becoming something, but about remembering that you already are everything you've been searching for. When this realization begins to settle in, you notice something beautiful. You no longer crave answers the way you used to. The questions remain, but they no longer torment you. They simply exist, like stars scattered across the night, silent, mysterious, and somehow perfect in their distance. You no longer need to define yourself, because you understand that whatever can be defined is not truly you. You no longer cling to roles or labels, because you sense how fluid you've always been. You no longer try to fix the uncertainty, because you see now that uncertainty is the space where life breathes. You stop needing to be certain to be free. You stop needing to be someone to be whole. And when this happens, a quiet joy begins to bloom, not the loud joy of achievement, but the soft joy of belonging. Belonging to nothing in particular, yet everything at once. You realize you were never separate from the flow you were trying to control. You were the flow itself, dreaming it was lost. And so you sit there, not knowing what's next, and for the first time, that's perfectly fine, because you sense that whatever comes will come through you, not against you. You don't need to chase your next chapter. It's already writing itself, in the silence, in the waiting, in the very act of being alive. This is the grace of not knowing, that it leaves you open enough to finally see. You no longer have to pretend to be the one holding everything together. You can let go and trust that the hands of existence are far steadier than your own. And then, when you least expect it, life begins to move again gently, effortlessly. Not because you forced it, but because you stopped blocking it. Not because you knew what to do, but because you allowed yourself to not know. You smile at the mystery of it all, the divine comedy of trying to plan infinity, and you understand that you were never lost. You were simply learning how to see again. So when you don't know what you're doing anymore, remember this: you don't need to. Life knows. It always has. And if you listen closely, you'll hear it whisper not in words, but in the rhythm of your own heart, that you are already home. After a while, you begin to notice that not knowing has its own kind of intelligence. It isn't confusion anymore. It's space, a vast, quiet openness that allows everything to be what it is. The mind, once frantic to decide and define, now learns to bow before something it cannot measure. At first, this feels disorienting, almost like losing the ground beneath your feet. You search for the next goal, the next explanation, the next identity that will anchor you again. But none of them fit. They feel too small, too artificial, too loud for the silence that's begun to bloom within you. So you stop chasing certainty, not out of defeat, but out of recognition. You realize that every certainty you've ever clung to has eventually dissolved, and yet something in you has remained untouched, unmoved, quietly aware. That awareness becomes your true home, your quiet refuge in the middle of life's noise. From that stillness, you begin to see the play more clearly. The constant striving, the endless self-improvement, the desperate need to prove your worth, all of it starts to look like a dream you finally awakened from. You smile, perhaps even laugh, at the absurdity of it. Because how could you ever improve upon something that was never broken? This realization does not make life dull. On the contrary, it makes everything radiant. When you stop trying to control the script, you begin to see the beauty of improvisation. You start to notice how every event, even the painful ones, carry a hidden rhythm, how each moment leads to the next, not through force, but through flow. You no longer see life as a staircase to climb, but as a river to enter. The river knows where it's going. You don't have to steer it. All you need to do is trust its current, and it will carry you exactly where you're meant to be. But trust is not passive. It is a living act. It means showing up without guarantees. It means stepping forward without knowing if the ground will appear beneath your feet. It means opening your heart, even when it has been broken before. It means daring to live without the armor of control, to love without the safety of certainty, to walk through the unknown as though it were your own home. In that trust, life begins to meet you halfway. Synchronicities appear not as miracles, but as natural expressions of harmony. You meet the right people at the right time. The opportunities you once chased begin to unfold on their own. You realize that the world was never withholding from you. It was waiting for you to stop resisting it. Something ancient in you awakens, a memory beyond words that existence has always been whole. You begin to see that the purpose of your confusion was never to be solved, but to humble you, to soften you, to open you wide enough to receive what intellect could never grasp. You start to live more gently. You listen more deeply. You speak less often, but with more truth. You become less interested in convincing and more interested in understanding. You see that every person you meet is also walking their own uncertain path, trying to find peace in the mystery. And that understanding breeds compassion. You stop demanding that people be perfect because you've stopped demanding that of yourself. You stop measuring worth by success because you've seen how empty success feels when it isn't aligned with being. You stop running from silence because you've discovered that silence isn't empty, it's alive, like the pause between waves. From here, a new kind of freedom begins to take shape, not the loud freedom of rebellion, but the quiet freedom of alignment. You no longer need to resist life, because you finally realize that you are not separate from it. You no longer need to search for meaning, because you've become meaning itself, unfolding, breathing, existing, without needing a reason. You start to see that what you once called confusion was actually grace in disguise. It stripped away what was false so that the truth could be felt, not understood. It wasn't chaos. It was clarity taking a slower, more honest form. Now, every ordinary act becomes sacred. Washing a dish, watching the rain, sitting with someone in silence. You feel the same intelligence moving through all of it, not above or beyond life, but within it. You realize that enlightenment was never about escaping the world. It was about coming home to it, as it is. You may still wake up some mornings feeling uncertain, but that no longer frightens you. You've learned to recognize it as a sign that you're alive, because certainty is the end of curiosity, and curiosity is the pulse of existence itself. You begin to thank the very uncertainty you once cursed, because you see how it's guided every step of your journey, not through control, but through connection. It kept you awake, it kept you humble, it kept you human. And perhaps that's the most profound discovery of all, that being human was never a mistake to overcome, but the miracle you were meant to embody. When you stop knowing, you start living. When you stop trying to arrive, you begin to arrive everywhere. When you stop seeking the divine outside of life, you realize it's been hiding inside every moment you ignored. The truth you've been searching for isn't hidden in books or philosophies. It's in the way your breath moves when you finally stop rushing. It's in the warmth of a sunrise you almost missed. It's in the quiet ache that reminds you how deeply you can still feel. Not knowing what you're doing anymore was never the end. It was the invitation, the doorway, the call back to what's real. And maybe that's all awakening truly is, remembering what you already knew before the world taught you to forget. Because the moment you stop demanding that life makes sense, it suddenly does, not in logic, but in wonder. Not in certainty, but in peace. You smile, not because everything is perfect, but because it doesn't need to be. You're no longer waiting to begin. You already have.